Hello everybody, I'm Gary York. Thank you for watching my YouTube today. And today I have a special guest, retired Florida State Prison Captain Dwayne Canady, who has 25 years of service. And he'll be with me today. I have 28 years of service with the Florida prison system myself. We're both retired. We have over 50 years experience between the two of us, and we still don't know everything. And that doesn't mean that we do know everything. That's why we're here to talk and try to learn from each other. Captain Canady, thank you very much for being here today.
You're welcome.
And I appreciate it. I want to talk to you about escapes and things that happen that can help aid inmates in their escape due to complacency. And I know that in your 25 years in the Florida prison system, you've had to deal with a few escapes. And there was one in particular when you just started that kind of caught my ear that you were telling me about when you just started working at the prison and some things you saw and reported and nothing was done about it. Would you just tell us what happened on that?
Yeah, I was inside security one day, and I was walking through the compound, and I saw these pallets. They were the long pallets, like 6 feet long. And I thought, well, you put a couple of those together, you got a ladder. And so I reported it to my higher up, the sergeant and lieutenant, and they totally ignored it. And because I was a new officer, they felt, I guess, that it wasn't worth looking into. But not much longer, a few weeks later, those same pallets were used in an escape. They had made a ladder behind the inside grounds office and went over the fence. 3 inmates had gone over the fence, and every one of them was in for murder and hit the swamps, and they were gone for quite a while.
Now, on this particular escape, there's a couple of things. Let me just hit what you just talked about. Number one, you saw this, and in your mind, you're a pretty new officer, correct?
Correct.
So you haven't had a lot of time in, but even in your mind, you thought these pallets laying out here on the compound could be dangerous.
Yes.
And unfortunately, the sergeant and lieutenant didn't take action. And I know one thing's for sure. It's very important to keep that compound clean and free of debris and things that inmates can use for not only escape paraphernalia, but weapons, correct?
Correct.
And daily, every shift should be out on that compound, checking for anything that needs to be removed from the compound. Anything that can be used as a weapon, as a ladder, as an escape paraphernalia, anything should be removed. And I know many prisons do that. Some don't, some do, but everybody should be doing that. Now, this escape ended up costing the state quite a bit of money, didn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we had all the other law enforcements involved, helicopters, sheriff's highway patrol, and we were all out there in the swamps for several days, and the helicopters, because of so many animals out there, the infrared was of no use. And so they wound up actually getting away from there and were caught later. But if they would have cleaned up the area like I had advised to get rid of this stuff, the escapes would never have happened at that one.
Later on, as you went up through the ranks to sergeant and lieutenant and captain, I'm sure these things stuck in your mind and you tried to listen to your officers a little more?
Oh, yes. Never underestimate someone that just because he's a new officer doesn't know anything. You can always learn from anybody. And I tried to always remember that as I came up. If someone I would listen to, I had to make the final decision as a supervisor. But if I felt that he had a legitimate and good idea, I would go with it and I would use it. And but at that time, you know, the new officers, they were really mostly ignored. But after that day, though, after they found out that they did use these, they went where everything on the compound was checked thoroughly. Everything was that looked like anything could be used as a ladder and everything. And they changed the policy on them because the wardens and the higher ups came down on them pretty hard about stuff being out there.
And you know, it's a shame, folks, that it takes an escape to get everybody on everybody's mind on safety and security and prevention, escape prevention. You know, it is our job and duty to protect the public. So that means keeping those inmates inside the fence is what we need to do. And it's a shame that things like this have to occur before people wake up. So please don't let that happen to you. And there is one thing I wanted to mention. That first night of the escape, they posted you and several officers out in the swamplands. For those of you not familiar with Florida, and especially this particular prison, Polk Correctional, it's in the middle of swampland, and it's very hard to track someone when they escape from this prison out there. But tell us a little bit about that fog and that night out there.
Yeah, that was quite an experience, and most of them they placed like 2 or maybe even 3, but with me they placed me by myself in a swamp, and as you know, any person that's ever been in the woods at night, it gets real dark, and so these guys were all in for murder that escaped. So what I did, there was a pond, so I placed the pond behind me, so if they actually tried to come around me, I could hear them in the water. So the fog started coming in, it rolled in like a wave, but then when it come across, you couldn't even see your hand in front of your face. But being from Florida and knowing, I laid down on the ground, and about a foot above the ground, the fog stays off the ground. That way I could look underneath the fog and see if I saw movement or whatever. And that's the way I did all that night. I laid there and waiting for the fog to lift. And so it wound up quite an experience. I was out there for several days, and they actually had forgot me because my wife, she had called looking for me, and they told her I'd went home. And then they realized I was still out there.
And they had to send a truck out and get you.
So they finally sent somebody out to get me, but I was at my post.
And I'm sure that you never forgot that experience as well when you became a leader. Accountability of all your men and women.
Yes, definitely. If you got people out there and you got to know where everybody's at. We had a room there where everybody was marked exactly where they were going to be stationed at. If they were roving, you knew where they were roving. Every position was accounted for. So every officer had to be accounted for when they leave and when they come back in.
So leaders, let that be a lesson. Always know where your men and women are stationed and where they're at. Accountability. No man or woman will be left behind. Always get them in and make sure, and don't leave them out in the swamp and forget to bring them back in when the next shift comes on or when it's time to relieve them of their duties. And another lesson that Captain Canady just mentioned, if you are ever placed in a situation in an escape where you're placed on a post out in the woods or anywhere, positioning. Position your body that will protect you the most. And as he did in the swamp, he put the water behind him so that he knows he's got this swamp water behind him, and maybe he can hear them if they're coming through the water. But more than likely, they won't come through that water, and he's facing the land, and he's down below the fog looking so he can see their feet. If he would have stayed standing up, correct?
Correct.
There's nothing but fog. You're not going to see anything.
Couldn't see your hand.
Get down below the fog. Florida's not the only place that has fog. Get down low and look. At least you'll see feet coming your way. And I really appreciate that. These are just some little tips. And sometimes it takes an incident that Captain Canady had when he first became a correctional officer to teach us these things. And we can learn from everybody. Talk to officers, out there that have been on these things. I don't care if you've got 15 years in, maybe you've never been on an escape. Talk to those officers like Captain Canady that have been out on escapes. This isn't the only one he was on, but this one I wanted to talk about because of security and the ladders and positioning and so forth. But talk to those officers and hear their stories of what they did. And you can use your own mind and judgment on how you want to handle the situation. But we learn from each other. And in this case, management learned from mistakes of not listening to the frontline troops. Thanks a lot. Go ahead. You got one more thing?
Yeah, there's one thing you can look for with inmates also. Sometimes they test our fence. You know, you'll see one throwing rocks or something, or being close to the fence, which they're not supposed to be in the first place. But they're testing to see which officer responds the fastest, and so they can time it, so to see if they do have enough time to get over the fence. Other times you can see inmates, like we had one escape, the inmate built his body up to the weather. You could see him running in shorts, no shirt, in the winter, because he had planned an escape, and which he eventually did later on, and we caught him the next morning. But he was building his body up to be able to withstand the cold going through the swamps and the water. He actually swam across a pond, and so, you know, you just look for little things that the average person might not look for. You know, they try to time the officers, see which one's the slowest, getting to the fence when the alarm goes off. They're maybe working out more than they normally did. They're running more than you've ever seen them run before. Like winter, they're trying to build their body accustomed to the cold, or whatever. There's little things you can see with inmates as you walk along in the compound. And usually somebody that works the compound a lot inside security, he pretty well knows the inmates, and he sees them every day, and he sees something that's going on a little different than what his normal routine is. You kind of look at that a little bit closer.
Hey, and everything is so true and so good to know. And you know what? Sometimes it's the little things we need to know that are the most important. Of course, we need to know our jobs and everything comprised with our job. But please keep all these things in mind, and always think about these every day when you come to work. Think of the little things that can change the whole outcome of an incident, or make something happen, or cause something to occur. Thank you for being with us. Appreciate it. Thank you. Everybody, please subscribe if you like this video. And please be safe out there and train to win. Thank you.
Thank you.